Hi, my name is Rachel, and I'm going to be playing a piece called Ballad of the Spirits by Imahoy Tesegi Miriam Gebru. And afterwards, I will be sharing some historical information and why I chose to share this piece for my creative project. I previously stated, this piece was written by Imahoi Tesegi Miriam Gebru. She recently died the past year or two. She was an Ethiopian nun who dedicated 10 whole years of her life strictly to her church, where she didn't wear any shoes, used no electricity, and didn't play piano for 10 years, even though she had been a pianist and a musician at the time and a composer. After her 10 years doing this, she eventually came back to music when she returned to her family after living at a church, and she dedicated the rest of her life to sharing music and having music be a tool of healing, especially for young people. Wow. Such a significant point that the lights came off. I chose this piece because it was inspired by the colonization of Ethiopia, the attempted colonization of Ethiopia by Italy around the era of World War II. And this song is specifically about all the spirits and souls that were lost and displaced because of this tragedy. This war was one of the first times that things like mustard gas was used in warfare. I think that this piece is relevant to Kafka's Metamorphosis because it talks about valuing humanity, but also valuing life in general. I think the main point that I took away from the Kafka piece is that all life, not just humans, need to be cherished. Even bugs. I remember reading it, I felt very disgusted by the very visceral language used, but then it made me think really deeply and reflect, like, why does this imagery of a bug so deeply disgust me when it's really just a living creature that wants to live like the rest of us and live in peace, have enough means to survive, and just be a part of the circle of life. But humans, we can be so destructive and controlling, and I feel like that was a part of Italy's concept of coming into Ethiopia. They're barbaric, they're less than human, therefore we need to cleanse it and take their resources because we are more worthy. I feel like whether it's treating another person as so or another animal as so, it's ultimately just going to lead to the human destruction, because all life is connected and humans depend on the land. So even the Italians using mustard gas on land which they wish to colonize is quite illogical and irrational, as they're poisoning the own land that they wish to settle. So overall, in the Kafka piece, in this song in particular, I see the connection of cherishing life. In regards to the Camus piece, The Stranger, my key point that I took away from that book was that violence is never justified. I know he talks about it more in an absurdist sense, and one of the main themes is creating meaning in a meaningless world. But I recently heard a quote that just really touched me, and it went something like, "Violence is a violation of self." And once again, connecting this to this piece, colonizing land is always violent. It is never justified. It is always, even though it's oftentimes with a mindset of superiority, it's always, I think, gonna ultimately just lead to the destruction of of all people, regardless of if they're in the in-group or out-group. I think inevitably, sooner or later, it will lead to all of their destruction. And I think the best way to explain why that is the feeling of this song. Just the utter despair, but the spirits are still lingering and they're still there and they're gonna haunt you, and you brought it onto yourself. I do. I think my issue with Camus is the fact that absurdism is so strictly non-spiritual. Um, Even though I just think that humans' inability to comprehend meaning of life could easily leave space for something like God or spirits or spirituality and so on. But regardless, yeah, I think in The Stranger they talk about violence a lot, and violence as a means of controlling others and like essentially a hopeless situation. So I'm thinking of the man with the dog and trying to whip the dog, the man with his partner and beating the woman, hoping that he'll control her. But I think it ultimately just leads to all these characters' demise because the dog leaves and he's sad, the woman leaves and he's petty, he wants to revenge, and then it causes this whole conundrum. I just think violence only pushes more violence, and it eventually inevitably pushes violence onto oneself. And I think that this piece strongly represents that, as it's so sentimental and deeply felt, and yeah, I think honestly the piece just speaks for itself. It's so expressive, and I really feel like I feel through playing her piece that I'm connecting to a much bigger picture, and that this piece speaks so strongly of colonization. And it just reminds me that violence can't be justified, whether that's in Israel or Palestine. It reminds me that this violence is ultimately just going to lead to self-destruction. Thank you.